These are soft tortillas with this beautiful tomato sauce, fresh cheese, a little cream, some cilantro on it. These are entomatadas. Okay, we're making entomatadas today, and that's probably not a word a lot of you really know. So I got to give you a little language lesson here. You know enchiladas, right? Okay, if you take the "in" off the beginning of it and the "adas" off the back of it, you have chile in the middle, chili, basically. So that is tortillas with a chili sauce, right? This is entomatadas, so you got the TOM in there, and that stands for the tomato. You could have enfrijoladas with an FRIJ in the middle of it, and that relates to frijoles, or beans, so that could be a bean sauce on top of it, and that's the way Mexican Spanish works. So today we're going to make something that's going to remind you a little bit of an enchilada, but it's got a tomato sauce on the top of it, okay? This is, I will say, lots of people's favorite dish when they go to their mom's house or to their grandma's house. And I will tell you, it is totally soul satisfying. So let's get started. I'm going to make a classic tomato sauce a la Mexicana in the tradition of the central and southern part of Mexico. And the first thing that I have to do is to roast some of the ingredients. Now I'm going to be working with fire roasted tomatoes in a can here, so I'm not going to work with roasting my own tomatoes. You could easily do that if it's the time of year when you can get really good tomatoes. Otherwise, just stick to the fire roasted in a can. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is to cut this onion. I don't need the whole thing. I just need the equivalent of basically a small onion, and I'm going to slice it and then lay that onto a baking sheet so that I can roast it. You could easily do this in a skillet on the stovetop too, if that is something that appeals to you. I've put some piece of foil on this because it makes the cleanup of roasting onions especially way easier here. I've got 6 cloves of garlic that are going to go into this. Yeah, 6 cloves of garlic. When you roast garlic, it gets sweet and it loses its pungency, but you need more of it. So I'm going to scatter these guys here on the baking sheet. And then I've got 3 serranos. You'll choose how much you want to put in this. Anything from 1 serrano to the 3. I'm going to make a kind of spicy sauce here. And I've got the broiler on high, and I've got the shelf as high up as I can get it. Now, if you were going to be roasting tomatoes alongside this, I would have to have a larger rimmed baking sheet to do this with, and I would just put the tomatoes with alongside all of this. But I'm going to slide this in here. And we'll come back and check it every couple of minutes. Probably those chilies will be the first thing to start blackening and blistering. We want them all to be soft. After 3 or 4 minutes, probably a lot of stuff is going to be ready to flip over. And then I'm going to say someplace in that 10-minute mark, everything should be roasted. I'll show you what that looks like when it comes out of the oven. I think we're just about ready here. You can see what they look like. You want to get some of that brown on everything, but these little guys over here, pull the stems of them off. Okay, I'm going to use a pair of tongs here to move everything to this blender jar because we're going to blend everything to a kind of coarse puree for making this sauce. I just turned this pan on. I'm heating the pan up a little bit. I'll put it over the right heat in just a minute. But the chilies can go in there, of course, all of the roasted onion. Now, you might be surprised that I didn't just saute all this stuff, but I'll tell you, roasting it changes not only its texture, but its flavor considerably, and you will get a very distinctive flavor out of it that I love, and I always think of as being very Mexican. Okay, so everything is in there except for now this garlic. So once it is ready, it will be completely soft. I just pick it up by the top end, and then I'm just you see how soft that garlic is there? You can squeeze it right out of there. So you pick it up so that you can grab on the root end of it there, and then just take it out. There it goes. But you can see how soft this stuff is. Yeah, it's a little hot to be working with still. You might want to let yours cool off just a little bit. And we're almost there. But you notice that this is a very different way of roasting than what you would find, say, in an Italian kitchen, where they would drizzle it with olive oil and then roast it in a low oven until it was really the consistency of butter. Okay, so now I'm going to move this out of our way here. I have the can of fire roasted tomatoes that I'm just going to put in, liquid and all. Now we'll put that onto the blender, and as I said before, I want to get a coarse puree. I don't want it to look like canned tomato sauce here. So I'm going to watch it as it purees here. All of the harder stuff was in the bottom. The tomatoes, of course, are very soft. I'm starting it on a low speed so that I can get everything mixing through those blades, and now that I can see everything is moving nicely through the blades, I'm going to turn it up a little bit. See the little dark bits of the roasted vegetables and tomatoes, and I'm going to say that that's just about it there, but I'm going to show you what I'm looking for. I really want this to have some texture but be smooth enough that it can make a sauce, so let's just look at it. So you can see some texture in that, but you can also notice that it's smooth enough that it looks like a little bit like a tomato sauce already. Now, the next step for making a traditional tomato sauce in Mexico is to sear this in oil. Now, that may seem like a crazy thing to do, but it really does change the flavor. It changes it in a positive way, and it will make it taste really Mexican. So I have this pan. I was heating it over low just to heat the pan up. One of the techniques that you will find lots of professional cooks doing. So now I'm going to put it over a kind of medium-high fire here. And I want to coat the bottom of this pan liberally. I'm using olive oil. You could use vegetable oil or fresh rendered pork fat. And then I'm going to put this in and I'm stir it. So I want to get my spatula going here. And you want to hear a good sear when you put it in there, because that says that the pan is hot enough to not let that mixture really lose the boil, okay? So it's searing it, and it's going to cook down until it is the consistency of tomato paste. You want to bring all those flavors together by searing it in the pan just this way, and you'll pretty much want to stir it. You don't have to stir it 100% of the time, but frequently over the next, say, 7 minutes or so until it's reduced. It will be darker in color, and it will literally get to the consistency of tomato paste. Okay, I think this looks really good. I think you'll see what I mean about being a darker color. Let me just hold it over here to you so you can see what this looks like. When I swoosh through the pan, you can clearly see the bottom. It looks like the consistency of warm tomato paste there. And that's what you're looking for. It's much darker than when we started. And now is the moment that we can put the chicken broth in here. If you want to make the whole thing vegetarian, you could do vegetable broth. I do think that you could make it with water if you wanted to, but if you've got a vegetable broth that you like, I would use that. But for those of you that want to add the extra richness that you could get from chicken stock, that's what I'm using in this dish. Now, we're not going to be putting any chicken in the dish, so this is a dish that certainly would appeal to a lot of vegetable lovers, whether they're vegetarian or not. And we have a herb to go in here. Traditional in central Mexico would be to use epazote for it. If you don't find epazote, you could use cilantro that I have here too, because I'm going to use some of that just as a garnish. But if you go to a Mexican grocery store, or if you're a gardener and want to grow epazote, this is what it looks like. It's the sort of a sawtooth herb, so it looks like it has a sawtooth edge to it. And it's one of those sort of pungent herbs, pungent like rosemary is pungent. And typically, especially in central Mexico, they will take the whole branch of epazote and just put it into the pot, which is what I'm going to do, and then we can fish it out later. We haven't salted it at all, but I'm just going to let it simmer for about 20 minutes or so for those flavors to come together and to get that flavor of the epazote sort of beautifully infused in it. If you don't have the epazote, I've just used a handful of cilantro. You might want to chop up leaves and put them in there, but it would take a lot more than the epazote that I put in there because the flavor of cilantro dissipates a lot when it is cooked. But we're just going to let that simmer away, and then we can adjust the consistency of it and finish these beauties, these little entomatadas that we're going to do, that are going to have just a very simple cheese filling in them. So I've got queso fresco here. When you go into a Mexican grocery store, or in fact in lots of regular grocery stores these days, you can find a little chunk of the cheese section that's devoted to Mexican cheeses, and almost always you will find some kind of a queso fresco or fresh cheese. It has a milky flavor to it, a little saltiness. It's all about freshness though. It doesn't taste like cheddar or anything that is aged. And when you get it, you just crumble it in your hands, and this is what you're going to get. So it just crumbles all up. And then I'm going to add a little texture to this by adding some onion to it. And I don't need a lot of onion, so I'm just going to take half of this onion. That will be about the right amount, or one really small onion you could use for it. And I'm going to cut it into about 1/4 inch pieces, maybe a little bit smaller. And then I'm going to rinse it. And that's the part that I really wanted to go into with you. If you're looking for the cleanest and freshest flavor out of your raw onion, then always do what the best cooks in Mexico do, which they call desflemando la cebolla, or deflaming the onion, to take away its strong flavors by simply rinsing it off. So when you cut into an onion like this, you have broken cell walls, and you create a sulfurous compound that you can just rinse off. So I'm going to take the chopped onion in a strainer and run it under very cold water. Just rinse it like that. Some people will tell you to splash on some vinegar or lime juice, which works fine, but I don't think you need it for a preparation like this. Then I always tap it against the side of the sink just to get rid of excess water. And then I'm going to add that to our queso fresco, and we will just mix that all together. And we're ready to finish these guys when our sauce is ready for us. Let's take a look at this sauce now. It's been simmering, and it looks just right. I grabbed a little bit of water because I thought it might be over reduced, and it should be a real brothy tomato sauce, not a thick tomato sauce. If you made it really thick, it won't bathe the tortillas in a right way. So speaking of tortillas, we've got this guy sitting over here. Oh, I think we should probably season it first. It's going to take the broth is really the critical thing to know. Is your broth salty or not? And I'm using pretty salty broth, so it's going to take about a 1/2 teaspoon or so of the salt to make this, I think, taste right. So let's see what this tastes like here. Nice, I hit it just right. So we'll turn this way down, let that just sit over there. Gosh, all those flavors, the roasted serranos in that and the roasted garlic, they're all big players in this sauce, which makes this taste undeniably Mexican. Okay, so tortillas. I'll show you, a lot of people would tell you to 1 by 1 in a skillet with oil, saute or fry these tortillas just for seconds per side so that they get soft. You can do that, and if that's your preference, then please do it. I think it's easier to use a spray bottle of oil. This is just vegetable oil in here, and then stack them. I want to make sure they're covered on both sides, but that's easy to do by just putting the one on top of the one that's just been sprayed, and it will moisten the one that's above. And that's kind of all you do. It's like for me, way easier than doing this, the one by one frying version of it. And then I'm going to put them into a plastic bag like this. I actually have to flip them over, and there was one side that I hadn't yet coated. Put them in here. Don't seal the bag, and put them in the microwave for 1 minute, and they will turn out really beautifully soft. Okay, so while those guys are going there, I'm going to think about the final garnishes for this. So epazote, even though it was the main flavor in it, isn't very often used as a fresh garnish on top of things because it has a really strong flavor that needs to integrate into a dish. Sometimes in our restaurants, we'll take some very little fine slices of epazote to sprinkle over a dish, but we typically use it mostly in a cooked way. So for that reason, I've got some cilantro here that I am going to pull the leaves off of to sprinkle over this dish. Now, you notice that I just kind of pull them like that, and it's because I don't like the picking leaves one by one. It's just, I find it to be a tiresome thing. So I just kind of pull them off at the top like that. And then we've got a whole bunch of them here that we can then further pick away. So there you go for, I'm just going to show you one plate of these beautiful entomatadas. So we will take our hot tortillas. Now remember, they're going to be hot. That 1 minute at full power in the microwave makes them very, very hot. But you'll notice here that when I take them out of here, they're steamy, okay, number one. And then I'm going to take 3 of them, but they're completely soft. Completely soft. I'm going to put 3 of them here in front of me, if I can get that last one up there. And then I'm going to take a spoonful of the filling and put that in the middle. The freshness of the cheese and the onion against the cooked sauce is what is so special about this preparation. Now with just a little bit of sauce to moisten this, but I'm talking about like a teaspoon and a half of sauce to moisten it on the inside like that. And then just make a half moon. I'm going to lay these little beauties here. And then they're not typically rolled up the way you might think an enchilada is. That gives us more tortilla to sauce ratio here. I will spoon some of the sauce, and you'll notice, again, I'm going to emphasize the consistency of the sauce. It's like a brothy tomato sauce. And so you want to cover all of the tortilla. That's what makes it an entomatada. Usually, once I get it, I want the sauce to pretty much fill the well of this plate, so I'll just shake it a little bit like that. We'll have more of the filling than what we need just to put on the inside of them, so a little bit more filling over the top here. I'm going to dollop on some crema. This is the Mexican style crema. You could use sour cream thinned with a little bit of milk here. This is a richer crema, something that's more like the French creme fraiche. So we'll put that on there. This is kind of one of my favorite parts of it, so I'm not skimping on that at all. Mexican queso añejo, you could use a little bit of Parmesan for that to add a little nuttier flavor. And then, of course, we have our leaves of cilantro that just kind of go over it like that. And there what you have is entomatadas. It's simple, it's incredibly soul satisfying, and it's a dish that I think you're going to fall in love with making.